for you this evening, thanking you for this beautiful, cool fall, crisp day that you've given us, and we thank you for all the blessings that you give us every day. We ask you to continue to bless our lives. Lord, we ask that you watch over our meeting this evening and guide our hearts and minds as we strive to make decisions that are in the best interest of our water system and its members. Lord, we ask that you watch over and protect military men and women, first responders, all those who work to keep us safe and free every day. And lastly, Lord, this evening we pray for all of the victims of war throughout the world. We pray for peace, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Dr. Lynchard, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone to the October meeting of our Holly Bar Water System Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here. We do have a quorum. We've got a full board this evening. Audio and video recorders are in use. Please fill out the member forum sign-up sheet in the lobby if you would like to address the board. And the way that works is if there's a particular agenda item that you'd like to speak on, once the board is finished with their discussion, if you will be recognized and come to the podium and state your name, we'll allow you to make any comments prior to the board taking any action on an item. There's also open forum at the end of the meeting that you can speak. And we're going to limit the open forum to 4 minutes to respect everyone's time and give everyone a chance to speak. And you can speak on an agenda item and you can speak in open forum if you'd like to. Early voting starts November 1st and ends December 22nd at 4 p.m. for our election. The Articles of Incorporation vote is only available on Election Day, January 16th. First item of business is approval of minutes and transcripts. We have the August 10th open bylaw amendment workshop transcripts, and we have the separate September 19th regular meeting minutes and transcripts. I'd like to get a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that?
Yes, I had one item for the action items for the minutes because they were in conflict with the transcripts that the staff directed, or update the board of directors on Hidden Creek Estates Interest question that we entertained last week. So that was added to the minutes. And it's already in the transcript.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? So we'll make that motion for the minutes amended as, or approval as amended.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of new memberships. We have a total of 282 new memberships and 282 canceled memberships and 1 transfer. I'd like to get a motion to approve the membership report as submitted.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. All righty, unfinished business. First item under unfinished business is the Holly Navarre Water System 2024 Board election. We have some new information on that, and Mr. Krigler, will you update us on that?
Yes, I'd be glad to. So we have several items that need approval tonight regarding the election. The first group has to do with the candidates that will be running in this year's election. So we had a canvassing committee meeting. It was last Thursday, October 12th. And the main purpose of that was to vet the candidates. That's done by confirming that they have the correct number of sponsors. We performed the appropriate background checks and also confirmed their membership status. So their questionnaires are also attached, as well as the results of the background checks. So the canvassing committee is recommending that these candidates meet the qualifications and that should be approved as vetted. The other part of the candidate approval is the press releases. That documentation is in your packet. It does include the answers to their questionnaires. And then the last piece of that has to do with ordering the ballots. So we're looking at ordering 2,500 ballots for the director's vote, and that's consistent with what we've done in the past. So initially, what we're looking for is a vote to approve the vetted candidates, releasing the questionnaire and the bios to the press, and then approving the order of 2,500 ballots.
The first item is to approve the slate of candidates for the
Yeah, so
the election, and for the record, I'll read off the candidates that have met the qualifications. There's Rob Lowe, there's myself, Mark Miller, there's Wes Seiler, and there's William Thiel to my right hand. So we need a motion to that effect.
So moved. I second.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? I'm an abstain.
And I'm going to abstain.
And Bill's an abstain. Motion carries.
5-0.
All right, and then
So you want to,
item B is the Articles of Incorporation Amendment, member ballot sample, Articles of Incorporation Amendment 3, proxy sample, and the updated election Articles of Incorporation amended documents.
yeah, so the other item that came up at the canvassing committee meeting had to do with a question about the use of proxies for the Articles of Incorporation ballot that's upcoming. So the question was posed to legal, does a proxy count as a member present at the annual meeting? So legal has looked into this issue again. We did get a response late last week that a proxy does count as a member present at the meeting, and that would apply to the Articles of Incorporation vote. So what that means is we have to just amend our election documents to reflect that one change. So we had the election documents approved in September. It was indicated that the proxy did not count for the Articles of Incorporation vote, and we are amending that, asking that to be amended tonight based on the recent legal opinion.
I'd like to ask staff to look at Exhibit L, where it talks about early voting and proxies, and I think we need to make it adamantly clear to members that absentee ballots do not count, proxies do, or proxies are turned in early. So I'd hate for somebody to think, obviously, if you don't know, I assign my proxy to Bill, Bill has to show up on the day and take his proxies and sign, correct, Amber? That's the process. So you are on there, but the way I read Exhibit L, the third paragraph down, it talks about talking about the amendment to the Articles of Incorporation via proxy during early voting. And I'm going to ask staff to relook at that because that is a little confusing to me. And I think we need to be abundantly clear to members that proxies do count, but there is no such thing as early voting. They need to be turned in early, I think. Is everybody going to think that, or is that just a cannibalism?
It's a little confusing, I agree with you.
Which paragraph, Joe? Are you
Third one down.
It's the highlight.
Okay, the members also have, okay.
You can just wordsmith that so
Okay.
that members don't
Yeah.
think there's early voting.
And I have a question on the proxy. Is there two, can a member vote absentee and still have a proxy assigned to somebody to vote on the Articles of Incorporation on the day? So there's going to be two separate proxies they can fill out? I just want to know the answer to that because it's unclear to me.
So,
Can you ask the question again? I'm not sure I follow.
Can a member vote absentee and still assign a proxy to vote for the Articles of Incorporation on the day of the election?
they can early vote for the director.
Two separate.
Two
separate, my
two separate
understanding.
entries.
Should be.
Yeah, I just wanted that clarified, that's all.
So is the,
I think that, so what's the consensus on the answer? Yes.
well, it depends on what the ballot reads, right?
I think it depends on how that proxy reads.
Yeah. Amber, what's going to be on the ballot when the member, because the absentee is not the same as the ballot, correct?
The Articles of Incorporation will have a separate ballot for the day of election from the director's ballot. If you look in your packets, we've also included the proxies. So there'll be one for the directors that they can request,
one for
and
that.
also one for the articles of incorporation. So if they choose to vote by proxy for the articles of incorporation, we would note that, and they could still come the day of election and vote for the directors. They wouldn't have the opportunity to then vote for the articles because they've already given their vote to someone else.
So my question is, can somebody request an absentee ballot for the directors? Okay? And can they also request a proxy to assign the vote on the articles of incorporation to someone?
Sure. Yeah, because we would keep track of that.
So that you're gonna put two separate proxy,
Yeah, you'd have to have two separate
yeah,
proxies.
that's my
You'd have
question.
to have
They're all-
a special proxy just for the articles.
Right, and that's what's in your packet for you guys, for the board to approve this evening. We have the director's sample for the proxy, and then the next page over, we have the proxy for the articles of incorporation sample. So there's going to be two separate
Two
proxies.
separate proxies. And they don't have to proxy either one, they can either vote absentee and then just not vote for the articles of incorporation.
Okay, you have two proxies. Where do I find? I've got one is Exhibit K. Where's
J and
J
and K.
J and K? Oh, okay.
Yeah, as long as the board approves that.
I don't trust the article.
Yeah, okay, so there's two, I just wanted to clarify that, make sure that the members understood what their options were.
Any other board discussion?
Let me read this.
Mr. Hall?
He said something down there, I didn't want to cut him off. Okay,
Go ahead.
I got a question on this. I remember when you, excuse me, I remember when you guys were originally talking about, how many votes it would take to change an article, Frank? You were setting a threshold for that. And part of what you were talking about at that time was there would be no proxies. So that's why you set the level at what you did. And now you're going back on that by saying proxies count. So why did you even, I mean, the idea was to have the hurdle high enough that they couldn't change the bylaws every time you change board members. But by allowing proxies, you're, person go out and get 300 proxies or whatever, just like you do when you run for election. And the next thing you know, they've surpassed the hurdle to change the bylaws. And I think it's very, well, I think it's very subjective. I think that what you set it at, whatever you set your hurdle at, should have been voted by people there, not by the use of proxies. I think it just bastardizes the system. That's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you, Harlan. I think the threshold applies to future bylaws changes.
Can I answer his question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so people don't think that it was the board. In our initial discussions, our legal counsel gave us his opinion that proxies would not be allowed in that. I subsequently did a little bit of research and went through the Florida statutes, and personally, I didn't think that to be the case. So I asked our legal staff to go back and review it again, review the Florida statutes, and they did and came back with, okay, Florida statutes require you to allow proxies based on the way your bylaws read. So it's not the board, and it's not the legal, and it's not even anything we can do here at Island of our water system. It's a state law. So you got to get Tallahassee to change the rules so people can't vote proxy until we amend our bylaws.
Yeah,
and
which
articles of incorporation.
if this passes, we can then
That's
amend the
right. Then we
bylaws
can do
and
that.
not allow proxies for
Then we can
anything.
do that. But we were acting on advice from legal counsel.
So basically, by what you're saying, this one does not require a hurdle to get over?
Oh, it still does.
No, it does.
Now, who set that? That's, you guys set the 850.
Majority of the
5%. Majority of members,
Majority of members present.
Both members, that's a roundabout
It's not
figure.
5%.
It's whatever, the day of the voting, however members we have at that time, it has to be 5% of the members that we have at that time, so.
Is that what it always was, or is that what
No,
you
that's-
said?
That's what we are
That's what we
changing the
agreed
articles
to.
of incorporation to.
That's what I'm getting at. You set this hurdle, and now you got the proxies.
So
That's exactly what I'm getting.
I don't think what we said was correct,
It's not.
and I'm happy to be corrected. So this vote for the Articles of Incorporation, my understanding was, it's gotta be 50% plus one of the people that show up that day. That's what it's gonna be.
Yes.
5% is for the future with the bylaws if this change passes. But the vote on the Articles of Incorporation for this election, my understanding is 50% plus one of the people that vote that day. Period. No 5%, no 10,
Correct.
no 1, no nothing, just 50%. If 20 people vote, you need 11. If 2,000 people vote, you need 1,001. That's it.
And
This
then,
coming election.
and then if this passes, then future changes to our articles of bylaws will require that.
I think it's not quite that simple, okay? Because the board has to approve it. And the Articles of Incorporation say 50%. So if it's less than 50%, then we're doing it in violation of our Articles of Incorporation. And this board will have to approve that change. And then there may be some challenges. But if it's less than, I think it doesn't matter if it's 50% or not. The Articles of Incorporation says that once that election happens, the board has to accept it. So I'm going to assume that if we're going to allow with less than 50%, this board's going to have to accept it. If you've only got 5% or 2% or 1% of the people that vote in this election, I, for one, am not going to vote to allow that to proceed, because I think we need more people voting. I think that, I personally think that it needs to stay at 50%. Just as you said, you've got proxies. If someone were to have the desire to change our Articles of Incorporation or our bylaws, they could go out and collect the proxies to meet the 50% rule and then change it. And that's the way I think it needs to be changed. But we've decided as a board that we're going to allow it to be less and see how that works.
So we didn't decide as a board that we would allow it. We've been provided legal advice that is in accordance with Florida law. That we've done that in the past, we have set the standard, set the precedent. Anybody correct me if that's not what we were told last time?
That's what Will said, because there was precedent back in the day
Because we
that
did
the
it.
members present, not even 50% of the members,
27.
those present on, because if you remember, there was 27 when they last changed the article. So and here's what I thought, is we were saying, okay, so the members on that day can change it, and we were actually making it more difficult by the 850. That's why I was supporting
For in
it.
the future.
Because the article right now says this 7 people here could change our bylaws if this was the annual meeting,
But
based on precedent.
Yeah, but my argument to that statement is I have presented an amendment to the bylaws, and we have used that precedent. It was about 10 years ago now. We used that precedent at that time, and we were told we couldn't change the bylaws. We had a vote of the members present that night, and legal told us no. So although one is in there that shows that it may have been wrong, and in that, it doesn't say anything about proxies, and I would imagine there were some proxies that night. But subsequently to that event, that last change, there has been attempts to amend the bylaws using the same rules, and it's been disallowed by this board.
Right. But
So-
this was to change the articles of incorporation, not even talking about down the line to the bylaws.
Yeah.
right? So that was my
But I think
impression.
that was what we changed. I would have to look back and see if it was changed the articles or the bylaws, but the threshold was the same, 50%.
I mean, David, are you thinking the same as I am? Because that's what I took it as. Right now, legal said these 7 could change the articles of incorporation, and we want to say, okay, we need at least 5% of the voting members. That's why I support it, because
In
it
the
is
future.
in the future.
Right. That's what I agree too.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I, yeah.
Please state your name for the
Kurt
record.
Cosby, Mr. Linnell is exactly right. It was spoke about ad nauseum at last month's meeting, that the first threshold is whoever is here, they have to vote on election day. And now you're saying you're going to allow proxies to come in here.
Can I respond?
And that's wrong. I agree with what you said.
Well,
Well, that's the legal.
I hadn't covered that part. Do you mind if I respond?
Yeah, oh, yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so I think when we did talk about it ad nauseum, as you mentioned, we did not want proxies to be included. We have since been informed, we must say that anybody that votes by proxy, when the proxy holder comes in and vote, that's the same as that member being present for that day. And that was the line of demarcation. You had to be present.
No matter how many.
No matter how many proxies they got, whether it's 10, 200, or 400. That's the legal, according to what we've been told in the last month.
I'll just say this and I'm going to sit down. This is getting shadier by the second.
It's interesting that the whole reason that we're trying to go through this and reconcile Article 9 and 10, and update this is so that we can do away with the proxy. We all agree that it's not proper, it's not, it's kind of ironic. It's like we're trying to do away with the proxies and, you know, I understand from, you know, past boards and stuff, there's a lot of, not a lot of debate, but, it's very interesting and it's very complicated too. It's not, we talked about it so much, we were around in circles for hours and,
For now, we have to allow them, but the end goal is to have that be one of the changes that are made so that we can eliminate the proxy. Please state your name for the record.
West Island. No, Dave just kind of said what I was going to say, is pointing out the irony. Also, I wasn't here for the last meeting. Why can't absentees count towards the incorporation vote if proxies are allowed, or the articles?
Because they're not voting on the day of the election.
But neither are the proxies, right?
Well, they're giving their vote to someone else who will be present. And that was
Legally,
what legal advised us, is that if they're giving their vote to someone who, would you weigh in on this, Will?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
distinction
please.
is that a proxy is considered to be voting on the day of, because they, through the proxy holder, is legally deemed to be participating in the discussion,
Yeah.
whereas a true absentee ballot is not a participant in the debate and discussion.
So you anticipate debate and discussion on election day?
There can be.
It's an annual
Could be.
meeting, members in debate.
That will be the decision of
And then-
members.
What was the Florida law that changed your opinion?
Well, it was my firm's opinion, under the Florida Nonprofit Corporation Act, it's chapter 617 of the Florida statute.
And that was something that you hadn't checked before the board informed you of it?
We conducted further research and issued a legal opinion.
Got it. All right, is that something that we can get a copy of? Or is that just for the board to see?
It's Florida statutes, it's, you know,
Your-
are you talking about the legal opinion?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or was it just like an email? Is that essentially what that was? Just want to understand the progression of how we got here.
Canvassing committee.
We don't typically share that.
It's attorney.
You can if you want to.
They can-
We don't
they
typically.
The Florida statute.
They can,
Yeah, Florida statute.
It's according to the Florida statute. I
But I
don't
don't
think
think
we
legally
share.
given.
I'm just trying to understand the nature between the board and the attorney when, no offense to you at all, but when the attorney doesn't cite that statute in their initial legal opinion and then is corrected by the board to study the statutes under which the water system is under.
Well, I'd say the initial was, it was off the cuff and they just said,
Yeah, it was-
hey, absentee
It
ballots
was
don't count.
discussion at a workshop, and then it was actual research done after a follow-up question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's exactly.
Okay, what other board discussion do we have on the election packet? We need to try to get to it. a motion on this?
I'll
Yeah.
motion we move forward with the recommended changes, making sure that members are aware proxies do count as a member on the day and there's no early vote. Early.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes. Can I discuss first? real quick? Yeah. Okay. Here's my discussion. We list early voting up there, and there really is no early voting. We have absentee ballots, and we have proxies, but we do not have early voting. There's not going to be a ballot machine back there where you can come down here and vote until the election day. As a matter of fact, our bylaws say that we do vote on election day, and absentee ballots aren't calculated until election day. So I think that those two words, early and voting, are confusing a lot of what we're doing up here.
So the wordsmithing that needs to happen needs to be voting by absentee
Yeah,
ballots in lieu.
absentee ballots will be available for November 1st and must be returned by December 22nd. Same thing with proxies.
That's
But
correct.
there is no early voting.
We call it absentee voting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Don?
I found what I was going to ask about, so I'm good.
You know, I would call attention to Exhibit N. I don't know if the directors have seen the, this is what the actual article's ballot is going to look like. I wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to look at that. I believe they're seeing it for the first time.
So you're gonna have to hand count them. They won't go through
That's correct.
Tappy's machine.
That's correct.
She's not gonna be there.
You know,
No,
the,
she'll be there. but it's
the
not-
machine will count Exhibit M, which is the director's ballot. Exhibit N will be hand counted.
All right, any other discussion?
Hey, I do have one thing. I just read this line here.
What page are you on, Darrell?
I'm on that Articles of Incorporation ballot.
Okay.
November, last page. Okay, and this is a question for the attorney, if I may. It says, the last, in favor of Holland Bar Water Systems proposal to revise Article 9 and Article 10 of the 1970 Articles of Incorporation as written. Shouldn't that say, as amended, or, because weren't there amendments to the Articles of Incorporation during the years
In 1986?
in 1986? So shouldn't that say, as amended as opposed to as written? Because as written would indicate the original ones in 1970.
It could add clarity. I don't think it would have to be interpreted as written to mean that it excludes the intervening amendments.
Okay.
But it may sound, it may actually add clarity.
Okay.
But it wouldn't have a legal distinction.
Okay. So maybe we could write instead of as written, we could say, as amended.
I'll add that to my motion.
Okay, any other discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. All righty, we have the implementation schedule of the recommendations for the forensic audit. Mr. Quigley.
Yes, thank you. So, last month at the board meeting, Carr, Riggs, and Ingram gave a presentation on the results of the forensic audit that they performed. Basically, their report had 15 recommendations. Staff indicated at the time that we would come back to the board with an implementation plan / schedule. We have since drafted that. It is attached, and although you can't read it up there, but we've listed out the recommendation, our staff response, and we've given some target dates here. One kind of overarching comment I want to make is that the whole goal here is to end up with what we're calling an accounting manual. The forensic audit identified lots of things that we can fix, but there's also things we're doing every day that are correct, that are also not written down in a policy or in a procedure. So this accounting manual will capture everything. It'll be procurement, all our different accounting processes and policies. It's stuff we've been doing over the years that's correct. We just need to document it. And even before this forensic audit, it was pointed out in our annual audit that we needed written policies and procedures, and we knew that, and we were gearing up for that. So that part of this is positive, and it gets us in that direction. So overall, the goal is to come up with that manual, and almost every one of these items kind of will eventually end up in that manual in some way. Now, a lot of these we're going to be able to accomplish a lot sooner, but the final manual is going to take a lot of effort from our finance staff, and then ultimately it'll come back to the board for review and approval. And if you guys remember how long the employee handbook took, this is probably a more complicated document, and that one took several shots to get through the board on that one. So, we feel good about these dates, but it requires buy-in and it requires staff to be able to focus on it. I do want to just kind of hit a few. I'm not going to go through every one, but I do want to hit a few on each page. Let's see, the first one is documentation of our accounting policies. That's the creation of the accounting manual. And it also involves storing these in a place where each employee can access them, because that was one of the concerns, is that some people haven't been informed or haven't been trained, and we'll get to training in a minute. The second one I want to touch on this page had to do with mandatory purchase orders. We've already written a process for how we're going to handle purchase orders. It was pointed out in the forensic audit that the date on the purchase orders on some of them was after the actual purchase. So we've coming up with some guidelines to rectify that, and some situations where that has to happen. Sometimes we have to buy stuff before we can do the purchase order. So it's just a matter of getting a written process. Donna has already drafted that, and ultimately that will be part of this accounting manual. Let's see, moving on to the next slide. Wanted to touch on the background checks. We currently have a process for background checks. And I think one of the recommendations in the audit had to do with stricter background checks for certain people. And then, of course, the board can decide how they want to handle, future directors. But, so we've got some dates for that. HR is working on that, and that's something we hope to have completed a lot sooner. HR has told me they can have something by the 1st of December on that. Bank reconciliations, that's another one where I think we've pretty much already implemented changes. So a lot of these are, they're already seeing progress. It's just that the completion of that final manual is going to take a while. One of the things that's kind of impeding that is the Edmunds implementation. Staff's having to deal with the new financial system and at the same time write their processes and procedures. So it's been complicated by the new ERP system as well. So finance continues to work through that. Just a couple on the third slide here. The conflict of interest disclosure statement, that's actually an agenda item here later in the meeting. We're looking at implementing the use of a fraud hotline and creating a whistleblower program. And then there would be training associated with that once that gets implemented. And we're hopeful we can get some of those changes in by the first of the year, if not January, February. So overall, we think this is a good approach. Some people will look at this and say, well, maybe May is a long way out, but we want to get this right. We've gone years and years and years without this manual. We want to do it right. So we think it's the right responses and the right timeline. So that's where we're at.
Okay, what discussion do we have from the board?
I have a couple. I talked briefly with Jeff about the difference between policy that the board approves versus the procedure where they're doing, how they shift the paperwork, but the overall policy obviously is the board. And some of the verbiage here kind of says policies and procedures, and it says finance director and CEO approves it, but you realize this, the board approves policy. How they shift paperwork from one person to another is not necessarily policy. The other thing I talked to him about basically was fraud hotline, right? Part of this issue was employees were aware of things and didn't know who to report it to, and were kept from going to board. So I know the recommendation is to go to a whistleblower, the Florida State Fraud Hotline, but I'm going to ask the board to consider and Jeff to look at including the board of director president as kind of the first step, or of any board member. And we know that they were kind of prohibited and dissuaded from doing that in the past.
I agree with that, Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to like set.
It's just, no, it's just that my input to Jeff, and I just want to make sure the whole board is hearing what we talked about. And then the last thing is really the payroll entries, where it talks about finance to audit HR records. We just need to be careful about HR and payroll and what somebody makes versus payroll, finance knowing. But again, we already talked about that. HR does HR, and how much Joe Campbell makes is that between HR and the CEO, and not necessarily finance. So overall, I think it's a good start. I think May is good timeline. So especially as we know how it was, and there was a lot of things that were just out there forever and ever, and you did it, but you had somebody else come in, and that's all I had.
Well, I think May is the timeline on the newer revised accounting manual. Most of the implementation that I'm seeing on here is December 31st of this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's for a lot of the written processes and procedures that we'll implement and put in place. And just in the meantime, we're also just being very conservative about everything we do. This purchasing policy, we've been focusing heavily on this since the first day I started. So, we certainly understand that while these dates are a way out, we still tend to follow everything until that time.
What's the timeline on the purchasing policy coming before the board?
Yeah, we can bring a draft to that before, and then maybe the final will be part of that accounting manual, but we can start working on that draft maybe we have maybe a draft of that in a couple months.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
And I trust you're looking at, where there was conflicts where it was, there's a couple items that the auditors found where there was a conflict of which way was really legal, whether a budgeted item counted as the threshold or not.
That was one of the bigger conflicts to resolve, yes.
I'd like that resolved sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I agree. Any other board discussion? Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, this is such a big deal. I had a couple of things to say. The first one was just applauding the board for, first of all, hiring what seems to be a really solid firm. Checking up on the folks that did the forensic look, see what they were like in the top, 25 in the country. So it seems like they did a very thorough job. And then publishing the report so that we could all see it. That was great. I think it was like within 2 days or something. So fantastic move there. And if I understand correctly from reading the report, it was a look at the internal controls related to the CEO. Because at the time we were wondering, there's stuff in his background, some issues with, things he had said to the board. And then the look was, did he actually affect the system? And now we're talking about systemic change to the system, 15 different points here that I think they went above and beyond what you asked to do to identify these and recommend them. So would very much encourage each of you to adopt this plan. And I'd love to see it myself. It's kind of hard to see all the details here just on the screen. So if that can be released at some point to the public as well, it seems like it'd be a good move. But it very much, to me, just from the outside looking in, seems like a turning point in a very positive direction. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I agree with Wes on that. I think that this is something that it would be a good idea for us to post alongside the audit report itself online, just so our members can see the timeline and the changes that we're making.
I see no downside at all to us putting this out there. I think it's completely a positive, showing what our response to that forensic audit is. So I agree with you.
Well, I'll make a motion to do it.
Any, all right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on releasing this to the members?
It's a great idea.
Okay, all right, all in favor, say aye. 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 Nays or abstentions, motion carries. All in all.
Just one quick thing on the, I was here when the forensic auditor went over a lot of this. And one thing that comes to mind is he stated in his report that there was he found problems outside of the what would you say, the scope that he was given. I don't know how to explain it. But he's seen problems, but he couldn't run them to ground because they were outside of the scope.
No, they're in here. Fuel card use and that sort of thing, they're in here.
No, he said there was other things besides what was listed
You
on it.
question them.
Yeah.
He-
There,
And he said if you guys would grant them broader scope, they could have found out whatever was going on with that. He said, not necessarily broader scope, but bigger
Bigger
timeline
timeline.
yeah.
with a narrower scope, I believe is how he explained it.
Yeah.
To run those. Has there been any thought to doing that? To finding out what the problems were that he was talking about?
Did he not, I believe he provided you a list of things that were outside the scope that they noted might have existed beyond the
Well,
6-month
he
period?
mentioned allegations that he couldn't prove in the data that he reviewed. And he
That's
said, for
wrong.
me to look at it further, you would have to authorize me for more scope. He didn't say, I saw this and that. He said, I was told this and that. I can't verify it with what I've seen, but if you authorize me to look further, I can look into it. So we need to make that distinction.
And that wasn't just the previous CEO, right?
No, that
No.
was, that was
That
everything.
was
Yes,
everything.
that's correct.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you guys were gonna follow up with that. Sounds like there might be something there to figure out. I mean, if this little scope come up with all these items, maybe by broadening and following these allegations, you might find a lot more. Just a thought.
Mr. President, I'm not gonna say that I wouldn't be interested in their finding, for what they did, what they would do if we allowed them to do that. But I think that we, as members and us, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our members. I think that we really need to think about the costs of such an undertaking. And, let's assume worst case scenario, for everything that's in your head. What's the reaction gonna be, or the benefit gonna be to the organization? Everything, I'm gonna say, off the top of my head, that 99% of what happened in the past isn't going on anymore, because we kind of eliminated the problem. So if we go and allow Car Riggs and Ingram to further investigate, we spend another $50,000 of our members' money, yours and mine. What are we gonna get out of it? How is that gonna benefit the members? That's the only thing that I would be worried about.
Let's not speak from the audience.
Well, he was.
I know.
Yeah. I was.
You'll need to come back up to the podium.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The only thing I was thinking is if you narrowed the scope, the cost would probably come down, because they wouldn't have a whole bunch of, different sets of books to go through that they've already kind of went through. They could just address the allegations and go that direction. And maybe the cost wouldn't be as significant and the timeline wouldn't necessarily be as long. That's all I would, since you already know what you're looking for. You're not going in to look for something.
I don't know that we've seen it. So, Mr. President, I got thoughts on that also. But similar to Director Lynchard. One, I don't think the scope was minimal to begin with. They had a pretty wide scope, shortened time period. And from what I remember, the comments being made, I didn't have the impression, or I don't remember hearing that any of the allegations would have been outside the areas that are already been revamped and not revamped. We've already decided we need to revamp these entire things. So if there was anybody that remembers or thinks they said, hey, those allegations aren't going to be covered in this stuff, then maybe it is something we should look at. But I'm not under that impression. If somebody is, I'm happy to talk about it. If the only thing we're gonna do is spend another 10,000, say, yeah, you still need to update your accounting policies. He didn't say it in so many words, but the gist of what Director Lynch said, I thought was, I don't know if there's a benefit to doing that if we're just gonna say, yeah, we need to update that. Still need to update that.
Or maybe we could reach out to them and ask what the specifics were.
Yeah.
And if it's in the scope of something that we think we haven't fixed yet or
Already
need to
covered.
work on. And, that shouldn't cost us anything.
But maybe ask what would the cost for an additional,
Well, just see what the situation is, see what because he didn't go into it
right.
in front of us and it wasn't written on the.
I agree with
So-
Don, there really wasn't this, there's a whole other issue over
Yeah,
here.
there wasn't a list they gave us.
Named or listed or specified.
Right.
So what's the benefit of pulling that thread and chasing it if there's?
There wasn't any facts provided,
Yeah, and
it was
what's
just
related to the
allegations.
Right, and find out what the allegations were, and if we think it's worth diving into, then maybe we can take a look at it.
I thought he had provided the allegations already, did he not, Jeff? Did he not give you a list of some of the things that,
It was a verbal conversation.
okay.
Ms. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carmen Reynolds, Navarre. While I'm asking this first question, is it possible for you to put the first 9 up there so that I can look at them, please? I'd really like to get a copy of that unless you're releasing it to the public. And in that event, I'd like to know how that will be. To the attorney, when you cited Chapter 617 for Florida nonprofits, could you give me a citation for the particular section and paragraph?
Ma'am, I'm referring to an email memo prepared by one of my colleagues. There's a number of parts to that statute that play into the analysis. Would you like the specific statutory citations?
I would.
Okay, well, start with 617.0720. These are general citations, all right? 617.0721, 617.1002, 617.1402, and then, in particular, section 617.1002, which I already referred to, expressly states, the proposed amendment, brackets, my words, part incorporation in brackets, shall be adopted upon receiving at least a majority or any larger or smaller percentage specified in the articles of incorporation or the bylaws of the votes which members present at such meeting or represented by proxy are entitled to cast.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a few more if you'd like.
Oh, that's okay. That'll get me started.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to compliment the board for, first of all, approving this initiative so that you all and the members could know what's really going on. And this is really Stephen Covey's translation of sharpening the sword. You don't know where you're going until you've identified where you've been. The board abdicated some of their responsibilities, and we were just lucky we weren't conned to a significant extent because we were very vulnerable after reading some of the things in this report. We really skated on thin ice. One of the areas that I'm concerned about is the whistleblower policy and that it's going to take at least 75 days to get things moving when termination, threats, and threats of termination produce trauma within the Holly-Navarre water system staff. I'm not patronizing them at all, but a reestablishment of competence, trust, and goodwill really needs to happen with regard to staff. Financial credentials. I'm not sure we have anybody really qualified financially for For instance, a CPA for an $87 to $93 million company, I really think you all deserve to have expert guidance so that things like this do not occur again. In fact, if the internal controls are not stringently created and employed, this could affect your ability to receive grants in the future because they want to know and be assured that there are really rigorous financial controls. And I think that is the extent, except that the report talked about some accounting and lack of documentation for Messi. And I know that the Messi manager is going to be upset with me for bringing this up, but I don't see that addressed here. Mr. Krigler, is it on one of those 15 items?
Not really. There was actually a footnote added to the report. That was something we discussed with the auditor. And that particular statement was not entirely accurate about Messi. They follow the same rules that we do, and our accounting staff does their books.
So are they going to issue a correction to their report?
They did. They added a footnote I believe it's in there.
And they corrected what they asserted incorrectly.
They added a footnote to clarify that statement because it was stated in an interview. So he didn't want to change someone's words, but he clarified in a footnote after speaking with management. So go back and check the footnote. I believe at the bottom of that page.
Great.
There's a footnote that clarifies that.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the board.
And in your question about how this implementation is going to be released to the public, we're going to post that on the website. Is that
I believe it was a vote.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what.
Well, I just want to clarify. It will be posted on.
I said to post it adjacent to this.
On the
or
website.
to the report on the website.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure that that's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
I want it to be right there beside it, so nobody has to look.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this agenda item? All right. No further action. New business, CEO update, Mr. Trigler.
Yes, thank you. A couple quick items. We did make the pension premium payment, which is an annual payment due as part of our pension requirements. That was done prior to the October 15th deadline, and then we did have a budgeted item for that. I did want to mention an event we had at the club. I believe it was in early October. The club hosted a Special Olympics event. I believe it was on a Saturday. I believe it was the first weekend in October, but don't quote me on the date. I believe they had about 40 participants, but included both kids and adults. And I believe they paired a participant with a sponsor slash mentor, and they were able to do some different play some different golf games or different holes on the course. So not a big revenue event, but it was our second year hosting this event, and I think this was a really nice event for the it's a community-minded event, and I just want to thank the Hidden Creek staff for kind of giving their time to participate in that. And
Did we do some sort of press release on that? Or?
We haven't yet. I'd asked for pictures and I haven't seen any yet. So
Well, if our press is here, we kind of
okay.
stomp it.
Well, I will try to dig some.
You do good work. You got to.
I agree. That's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah.
We were proud of them. So.
Yeah.
Another item from the September board meeting, we were asked to provide the kind of current Sprayfield cost breakdown. We have done that. It's in the back of the finances. What we've tried to provide is the year-to-date, which is a graphic, and then also provide the monthly invoice that should show the monthly costs that the water system is reimbursing Hidden Creek for. Yes, so you should have two different pieces of information there that hopefully answer the question of what you were looking for there, Director Lynchard. It's in the very back of, if you start on tab 3 and go back from there, there's an invoice, and then there's a graphic that shows the breakdown of the cost to date for the year. And that's through August. That is not through September.
Let's go one away.
Any questions from the board on the spray field? Y'all still looking over it?
I'll have some questions on it, but I won't have them.
That's fine. Yep, we'll.
Not today. Not today.
Okay, is that the conclusion of your update, Mr. Pritchett?
It is.
Okay. Ms. Reynolds?
Yes, Carmen Reynolds, Navarre. How will we know about what that breakdown is? Will you verbalize it to us, or how will we know the results of that breakdown that you just went over in your packet?
You talking about the spray field costs?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, I can answer that. We've discussed ad nauseum, especially over the past year, what we considered as a board spray field costs. And we actually voted last September, I think, on that. So if you look at that meeting, you'll know exactly what we have determined to be spray field costs as a board. Now.
But
yeah.
you've got it on a
Okay,
paper,
okay.
right? Listed on a paper.
Hold on for just 1 minute.
140.
I wasn't finished. Now, if there were any costs that the Holly Navarre water system pays, that there were over and above those that we approved, in other words, they didn't fall into those categories we approved, I can guarantee you, we will be discussing that in a future meeting because I won't let it slip by. But
Okay.
we just received that, I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to look at any of the detail. So I don't think anybody on the board is really ready to discuss that.
Well, we
tonight.
had, you provided that information earlier this year because the question was asked. I know I asked the question, was the subject was the $250,000 that was written last year. And you indicated that that list that you provided was all itemized, was valid in accordance with the resolution that was passed, right? Those valid
Those were from the 2022.
for 2022. And it also, the 277 includes the first 3 months of 23, right, also?
So Ms. Reynolds, to date, $142,000 is spray field costs. And just keep in mind our estimate to run a spray field is $314,000. So because the golf course is making a little money with a little better management, that cost is defrayed to them.
And when you say to date, the start date,
To 1 Jan to
August,
Through
end of August.
through August the 30th. Okay, thank you. I was just wondering what was in your little,
And,
what was in your little hat with the rabbit you just pulled out.
and the board has approved up to 169.9 for this year. Again, the cost of running the spray field, if there was no golf course operation, has been determined to be $314,000 a year.
All righty, thank you very
So the
much.
differential is what, if we stick to that 169.9, or the differential, anything below 314, the operation of the golf course is contributing to the members. In other words, to the Holly Navarre.
Okay.
Defrayed costs.
Please understand, I'm not trying to be difficult, but when you have a report and we don't know what you're referring to, we can't follow along. At least I can't. Maybe the brainiacs can, but I can't. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the CEO update. Unless there's any further discussion on that. Next on the agenda is a review of the August 2023 financials. Mr. Trigger?
Yes, thank you. I'll defer to Ms. Barber on that.
Nothing out of the ordinary to report. Total revenue for the month of August was $1,309,071. Total expenses were $1,022,376 with a net income of $285,695. Overall, been great.
Good month.
Good month.
Any discussion on the financials?
And the year-to-date is 838.
Year to date is 838,892.
Okay. Any other discussion on the financials? If not, I'd like a motion to approve the financials as submitted.
I do have one question on some, and it's more a question than not. So I see a lot of the check register has the same auto repair place. Is that part of, do we go out and get bids for auto repairs? And that's, I keep seeing the same place. And I know in the past, we kind of used one place and didn't spread the wealth throughout our other auto repairs. So I'm just.
About Navarre Auto Repair?
I wasn't gonna mention,
Oh, I'm
I was
sorry.
just making sure that is there a bid, you know, you go out and get?
I know that it's a proximity issue and how quick they can get it done issue. Clinton, do you know if?
Sometimes we take it back to the dealership. Some items we just take right here to the shop.
I got it.
Oil changes, but 3 or 4 different places where we get oil changes.
So just make sure that.
Yeah, certainly a warranty issue would go back to the dealership.
Okay.
You know, a lot of our trucks are older, so they can't.
Our goal is to get them back on the road as quick as possible.
And that is a concern with vehicle repairs. There's a lot of shops that say we can get to you 3 weeks from now, you know.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the financials for September as presented.
I'll second.
August.
I mean, for
I was
August.
gonna
not-
say, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's- my bad, August 2023 as
You
presented.
can stay.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions, motion carries. We have our director's update with the Finance Committee, Director Campbell.
Don, can you cover CIP, please?
CIP, still behind, you know, we're waiting some on Eglin, hasn't gone, have we let the tank contract? We actually let the contract, for the tank down by Elevate Navarre, so that'll be hitting the books pretty soon when they start working on that, but otherwise, you know, a lot of it is, we're not spending it all yet, thankfully, not that many problems yet, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Well, I was told we will start using that lift station repairs improvement, so we expect, you know, we think things break. We know what happens. Just hasn't happened yet. It'll ramp up at some point.
And what's the time frame for that tank?
1 year.
1 year. Got it. Okay. And Director Lyncher, the budget?
Sure, we had our, budget meeting, everything is tracking, right where we're at, we're, you know, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the year, 2/3 through the year, as of our last meeting, and we're dead on 2/3 expenses and revenues. With the exception of interest income, we budgeted, I think it was around 15,000 or maybe a little less for interest income last year, and our interest income's $144,000. So they're doing pretty good.
I know, Clinton, you had a concern earlier about wastewater and water repairs, but that looks like to be on track. For both of them, you thought we might have to move some money, but I looked at it and those
Yeah,
are,
we,
knock on wood, barring any issues.
especially in the wastewater budget line.
I know that was a concern earlier. That's all I had, man.
Okay. The Eglin Regional Reuse Project, we did have a meeting. We had a room full of all the players here. And I think that meeting was about, 21 minutes long, or
Yes.
something like that. It was a really quick, all positive, everything's right on track. There's really no issues, and, you know, that's a wonderful thing that, knock on wood, is still tracking right along just like it's supposed to.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So with the easements and that timeline, when do we think we're gonna start looking at money for phase 1B to
The money,
look to put that out and everything?
assuming everything goes okay, November 14-ish, I can't remember the exact,
27.
27th. I don't know why I keep saying 14th.
That, is that the easement?
27th.
It's the order of taking here.
Got it, okay. And I know the county's responsible, I guess, so
As
after
soon
that,
as-
then you can start looking at the
As soon as the judge.
transmission line, that's what it's called?
Yes. As soon as the judge issues an order based on that hearing, we will advertise phase 1B, which is all the transmission main.
So Jeff, really for you, so when do you think the boards have to start looking at money and that for that transmission line? Early part of the year? after the election.
Yeah,
before
winter,
the election.
winter, spring, before we would expend money.
Got it.
I mean, it's
But I
got
mean-
several months to go through the bidding process.
Got it.
That includes the pipe under the bay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
All
so,
of the pipeline up to the leased property.
okay, thank you.
The lease, the pipeline from starting at the leased property is in 1A, right?
Correct. Everything on the leased property is in 1A.
Which has already been approved.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And when are they starting work on the property?
Paperwork and all, Mark, they have actually already started. When will we see the first piece of ground broken out there? They have released a tentative schedule. We actually have the official pre-construction meeting tomorrow. I'm guessing, Mark, because of the preliminary stuff that we have to do environmentally, to get the site permit, I'm gonna say mid-January, probably, to actually see a piece of equipment move out there.
Thought we were looking at a groundbreaking sooner than that. Is
Well,
that-
you might have an official groundbreaking ceremony whenever you schedule it, but in terms of real construction, that's when real construction will happen.
Okay.
Before the next annual meeting,
Uh,
get the shovels out there.
I would hope so, yeah.
I
So,
saw an email
Yeah,
where
do you
it
know where the
seemed like
shovels
we
are?
were gonna have.
We're gonna talk with the contractor tomorrow about that, and, you know, maybe you can put a piece of equipment out there for that, so. We think we can have a good event if we
Lots
do it in
of gold
December.
shovels,
Yeah.
Right,
10 gold shovels.
so does it,
I'm not
does it break
aware of
the,
I don't need to go.
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
can we get the timeline for that, or does that break the Eglin public rules?
Timeline.
No, the project schedule?
Construction schedule?
He'll give that, yeah.
Timeline that says all that we just asked about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's one of the documents we'll be discussing tomorrow is project schedule, so we'll have
Yeah,
a,
I actually have a tentative project schedule that's not approved by us. It's not even finalized by them.
Just looking for a wag.
Yeah, tomorrow will be the be all end all where we discuss those things.
I know, I'd like to see that, just if I could.
All right, next up, the Club at Hidden Creek Management Board. Mr. Krieger.
yes, so this past weekend, we had a, good-sized wedding event in our new event space. I've received some really good feedback from it, and we're hoping to use some of the pictures taken after some agreements with the photographer in some future marketing materials to advertise that space. So we think that's going to work out real well. And like I said, I got really good feedback on that event from the staff. Financially, total revenue year-to-date at the club, they're about $300,000 over budget. I believe they're still on track for the highest revenue at least in the last 3 to 4 years. So they're doing a good job out there in terms of course conditions. We're hearing a lot of good feedback on that. And they're getting a lot of rounds of golf in. Of course, the weather's acted in their favor, but like I said, they're doing what they can to keep those rounds up. Net income to date through August, we're looking at about $200,000. So that's also a positive. So once again, kind of kudos to them for
That's net
for a
profit
solid
to
year.
date, is that not?
I'm sorry, that's correct. Yep, net profit to date through August.
Okay, any questions on Hidden Creek? Fairpoint Regional Utility System, Mr. Krieger.
Yeah, not a lot. I'll just go over one item on Fairpoint. This past year, we changed the date when the Fairpoint budget is due. We changed that as part of the member agreements to be done before the end of the year. So we'll actually be working on the Fairpoint budget and turning that in at the November Fairpoint meeting. So that's what we're working towards. It's kind of the hottest topic right now is getting the budget done for Fairpoint.
All right, and lastly, municipal engineering, Mr. Phillips.
Corporate-wise, we haven't had a meeting in the last month. Next meeting will be with regard to budget for the end of the year, since we now have the requirement to produce the budget by the end of the year. Couple of items to give updates on. We took possession of the manhole camera that we purchased. By we, I mean Mark Turner. Phil wasn't allowed to touch the thing. We understand that the side-by-side mounted camera is very shortly going to be made available to us. So hopefully both those things are pretty close. Camera's a pretty interesting thing. Probably when we get both of them in, I talked to Mark Turner about maybe giving a demonstration one day for the board members to attend if they'd like to come and take a look at it. It's pretty interesting technology, so. I think that's all I have to report.
Cool. All right, we're going to move on to item 4, the corporate tax returns for 2022. Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, so Warren Averett has prepared drafts of these annual returns for 2022. We tried to send these out with plenty of advance notice in case there was any questions or comments. So, tonight we're seeking approval for board president to have signatory authority and for us to submit the 2022 corporate tax returns.
I make a motion to allow our president to sign the 2022 tax return for Hollywood Water Water System.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to discuss one thing I was flipping through this, the 990, and under part 7, I noticed that we've got a couple of names and amounts and things redacted. Now, were those redacted at the request of our CPA firm, or was that something that staff did? Because if something that staff did, they need to call the CPA firm and ask them if it's okay to redact that under federal law, because I don't think it is.
We did, that's employee information.
Yeah, I know. So you asked the CPA firm, and the CPA firm said it was okay to redact it?
They actually sent the, original documents for execution tonight, just in case they were, and they're redacted in the originals as well.
And that's the same one
But
that's
not the
being,
electronic filing, Daryl.
Yeah,
It's the same way with ours.
okay. Make sure, because I know there's some pretty stiff penalties.
I don't remember it being redacted last year.
It was not.
I know.
It has never been redacted. So if that's something that our CPA firm said,
Well,
then I'm sure they're on the hook for it. So-
We certainly don't mind double checking with
They
Kristen.
wouldn't be redacted for submittal, they're only
No,
redacted
but-
for.
But for distribution is what I'm talking about. Because anybody can come down here and under federal law, we're required to hand them a copy of that 990. Different with an 1120 or 1120S, or, 1065. The 990, you're required by federal law to give out a complete copy of the tax return so people can see what was going on. And if you start redacting it, the information on there, people don't know what was going on.
So Barbara, so that the one that will be filed won't be redacted,
Will not be redacted.
but the one we see is redacted.
All because it's personal and confidential.
Oh, because it's got his.
But don't we have to approve the tax return? So we're approving items that we can't see. So I won't be voting to approve.
Let's see, we have a deadline of
November 15th.
November 15th, so we can certainly get clarification, but we would have to somehow,
Yeah. I don't think
reconvene or do
anybody should
sometime.
approve something that they're not allowed to see. I mean,
Yeah, that's,
doesn't make any sense to me.
It's got the amounts at the bottom of the summary, it just doesn't have the individual line, the names and the individual.
I think we had this discussion about trying to approve, minutes that had been redacted. And
Yeah, it's employee
certainly hope
compensation
so.
that we're not seeing the individual line items, we're seeing the total amount of compensation.
if you're comfortable voting on something that you're not allowed to see, you're more than welcome to. I won't.
We do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I'd like clarification. Well, I think I know the two individuals, but last year there was 3 on there, so I don't know when it's since retired, but it's highest compensated employees, obviously, so.
Should be 3 for 2022 at least.
Can we,
Give it to the board.
Get-
and get a copy.
yeah, I mean, can we get an unredacted copy sent to the board? And just do it as a board action without a meeting?
Yeah, if the
I'm okay with
board's
that.
comfortable doing that, I'll
I
gladly
can
do
do
that. Yeah, that's fine.
We can see her.
Are we gonna, withdraw the motion or are we gonna vote?
Yeah, I withdraw my second.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Motion withdrawn, okay. So we'll do this as a board action without a meeting. Make sure it's good. All righty, we're gonna move on to the next item, conflict of interest policy. Mr. Crigley.
Yes, so this is one of the items that was mentioned as a recommendation in the forensic audit. We've had a policy and a conflict of interest statement drafted that is included in your packet under tab 5. So hopefully you had a chance to look through that. The intent is that the statement would be signed annually by directors, principal officers, and also members of the board committee. So if there was like a bid selection committee or some other special committee, they would sign it as well. So that's the way this was drafted. And once again, this was a recommendation from the forensic audit.
Has everyone had a chance to look over the conflict of interest policy, and is there any discussion on that?
I make a motion, we approve it as presented. Second that.
We have a motion and a second. My discussion is that I think it's a good policy. I think it's something that we needed to do for a while, and I'm in favor of it.
Now, I would like to see this posted also online so the members have an opportunity to review it. I don't see any reason why it cannot.
Sounds good to me.
I'm okay with that. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, because there was a code of conduct, but it had no weight, so I'll wait till it happens before I say. You know, you can have a conflict of interest policy, but if I leave something out there and it's found, what's the disregard? Okay.
To your point, Joe, I don't think that we've got, even if you have a straight up conflict of interest, it's not something that you can be removed from this
Yeah,
board.
and that's why I said disregard.
This is a good thing, but it doesn't change who's on the board.
I opened my mouth before I thought.
Sorry. I do that sometimes too. All righty, that's approved. We'll sign that tonight and begin using it immediately. Operations dewatering pump purchase, Mr. Crigley.
Yeah, so this is for a purchase of a dewatering pump. We do have 3 quotes attached for this. Currently, when we do dewatering, and Clinton, correct me if I'm wrong, we're using our bypass pumps, and it's not a correct application. These dewatering pumps have different head and suction conditions, so it's really not the correct application for the pumps we have. So this is really just adding to our fleet of pumps for this specific circumstance, which typically occurs when we have to make a repair, trench is full of water, or we've got to lower the groundwater in an area to, like I said, to make a repair or access something.
For the Napoleon's corporal here, a dewatering pump is used for both taking water out of a pipe that needs repair and also,
This is actually for Bill Point system.
okay, so it's
Lowering the groundwater.
make sure the groundwater's low.
That's
Okay.
correct, yes.
And you don't have one currently now that
We
you,
don't have the prop. We've been utilizing some pumps that are not built for that,
okay,
and we've gotten by with it, but it's time we get a true deal.
okay.
I make a motion, we purchase
Well, second.
the pump.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Fiscal impact on that is $35,092.59.
That's the next item.
43,945, sorry, I was reading the wrong line. $43,945. Any other discussion on that?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes,
Am I reading right? That wasn't the low bid? Consider it the best value for different reasons?
Yes, sir. The low bid is actually not a true 6-inch pump, which we specified we wanted. It's got 4-inch internals in it, which is 6-inch suction and 6-inch discharge. So it's not true apples to apples. And it also didn't include the box that goes on the end. So that it's another $2,700. The Myers and Seth pump, we've done some research on. All the big rental companies are going these pumps for so long.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Sorry, Ms. Reynolds, I didn't see you.
No problem. Thank you, President Miller. I just wanted to know what the life cycle is on this dewatering pump.
I would have to go to the manufacturer's recommendations, but it was probably going to be a 8-year life cycle.
Did you say 8 years? So in 5 years, we might have to replace or get another pump, but this probably won't come up for a while. Again,
Yes,
thank you.
and a warranty, any warranty on that?
I'm sure there's 1 year.
1 year?
Yeah.
So you get it off
Like
the truck.
everything.
Everything.
But like most things, if it lasts a year, it'll probably last 8 years, you know.
Right.
That's right.
Issues first and once you got it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All righty, next item up is the Colonial Pines lift station number 16 pump replacement. Mr. Gregory.
Yes, this is a lift station out on the, I guess that'd be the east side of the system. And really just in response to growth out in that part of the system. And the fact that these pumps have been in for a long time, they're due for an upgrade. Because we're putting in slightly bigger pumps, we have to upgrade the controls as well. So the 35,000 includes new upgraded pumps as well as upgrade of the controls. And my understanding of Mark Turner's approach here, we're buying the pumps, but the majority of the electrical upgrades being done in-house, correct? Right. And we've attached the quotes for the pumps and some of the electrical components that still have to be purchased.
I see we're working on that one quite a bit, so
It's been struggling for a while.
yeah,
We gotta get the top, that's 98%, not going to. There's still lead time on the pumps for 4 weeks.
is there?
I'm sorry to ask this question, but we're gonna do a majority of the electrical work in-house. And the electrical work on the invoice is a little over, like, right at $11,000. So we're gonna do more than that in electrical work in-house? And how much, approximately how much is that number? Because it says 35,000 here. Are we looking at $50,000 bill for this, or?
No, that's total price.
Oh, okay. Does that include in-house work?
Well, not the labor, but.
Oh, okay.
But as far as.
Okay. Oh, okay, I was thinking we were burning boards and things like that. Okay.
Okay, we don't have a motion yet.
I make a motion to approve the CIP project for Colonial Pines lift station number 60. as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Fiscal impact $35,092.59. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. All righty, we're down to engineering. Mr. Phillips.
Well, if you look at the first page of the engineering section, you see Clinton's been a pretty good boy the last month. Unaccounted for losses are at 7.3%, and again, we're held to a 10% number by the regulatory agencies. If you flip the page, you'll see the information that I usually point out, which is the inflow and infiltration. If you remember last month, I said it's really the first true month where we've seen what actually should happen. It's a little worse this month in that there was a little tiny bit of observable I&I, but still pretty good compared to the rest of the year. And of course, again, I'll point out that we're pretty darn fortunate right now that there's just been no rain. It's not, again, although there's been a lot done since I&I was first started to be addressed, we do still have some I&I issues that we're working on. But we're benefiting from the weather right now, so. And if anybody has any other questions with regard to the master booster pump station and the elevated tank, as John said, the tank is awarded, CBI's starting on that. The booster pump station, the design is essentially complete, but because the tank folks have to have the site essentially for their full year, that project won't be bid until they get very close to being done, until we can actually foresee a date when we can occupy the property. I think we kind of beat Eglin to death a little bit. Anybody have any other questions?
I would just like to comment that, to echo your comments, that they're doing a good job for unaccounted water loss. With the goal from being 10%, we've been historically well below that. Although our goal is ostensibly 5%, I think that's probably a little bit unrealistic. I don't think we will attain it a couple times, but you're doing well. And compared, I asked Clint for some other details of how our competitors, not our competitors, how our sister water units were doing. And the only one that's even close to us is Midway. They're around 7.4%. Gulf Breeze and Holly Navarre are at 20%. Not Holly Navarre, Holly Navarre Beach, excuse me. They're at 20%, so kudos.
All right, that concludes our engineering report. We're down to member forum. I'm going to go down the list. Folks that have signed in, let me know if you still would like to speak. Carmen Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Carmen Reynolds, Navarre. You guys brought this up, so I was looking at the Form 990 from last year, so that was the past. And if you'll help me with this math, because I really don't understand it too well. Dallas Peavy, CEO, base compensation, $156,034. Bonus and incentive compensation, $25,879. Other reportable compensation, $19,097. Retirement and other deferred compensation, $6,203. For a total of $237,340. Can somebody interpret this for me, please?
That would have been the information from 2021. I don't think anybody else does that off.
Okay. And so what happens with the money that was put into his retirement and deferred compensation fund of $6,203?
401k plan that he would have been eligible for.
Okay.
So I believe that would have, I don't know how.
Do they take it out even after you all let him go?
I don't know.
You only contribute to that while you're employed, or at least it's only a company match while you're employed here.
Right.
And once you contribute to that, it stays into the
Okay.
account.
Okay. So $237,340. Sobering. Thank you.
All right, West Island.
Yeah, I mean, that paints the picture, just kind of picking up where she left off. That's also the kind of problems that we saw in the report. But kind of like I said earlier, releasing that is probably a difficult step, but it's a necessary one because it allows people to see what's going on, at which point accountability occurs from the outside as well as within, and that's what leads to the success. And that's what I'm starting to see, like just the base level operations that Jeff is already doing is a step in the right direction. I think you said most profit 3 to 4 years from the club, right? He's only been here a few months, right? He's already moving it in the right direction. You want people to be getting married at, at the club at Hidden Creek. You want memories to be made there, not, a place that's funneling money, like she was saying, to someone who's got a history that Dallas PD had. The other things, the contracts was huge in that report of you guys as a board not even being aware or approving of hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent. And already tonight, you're seeing that dynamic start to resurface at the board and the CEO having a much more healthy conversation. Starting to implement policies from the auditors is a great thing. I think, at least from my perspective, when Dave stood up a year ago and said we need to have an audit, this is what we hope to achieve, or at least what I hope to come out from that, and a lot of other people as well. So, like I said, hopefully it's a new era of turning the ship, of moving this in the right direction, but that involves that transparency, and that's the task on you guys. Is just like I think it was Bill and a couple others, kind of their first instinct was, should we release this to the public? Yes. Always yes. Like let the people see it. We need the context. We need to understand. We may not know everything you guys do. But when you do that, it opens up that conversation, which leads to the type of good results we're starting to see. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Wes. Kurt Cosby.
He's gone.
Oh, he's gone. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other member forum? If you will, sign a sheet before you do.
I will.
Yeah.
Harlan Hall, I want to commend you guys for doing the audit that you did and for releasing it to the public so they could see what was going on. I think that was a great step toward transparency. And I think that I commend you guys for that. And I also commend, I don't know his name, he's the second guy there, on the pump deal, for actually researching that pump, finding out that it, because the lowest bidder isn't always right.
You can admit it was Mark Turner that found that.
Yeah.
I was giving credit to one of his troops, Ryan Hicks.
Well,
But
but understand, but doing that little bit of research sometimes, really, they could have ended up with a substandard product. So I just want to thank him for doing that research, and hopefully all the departments continue that on things that go out to bid, so we do get the best bang for our dollar.
Thank you.
You guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
All righty, that concludes our meeting, October meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Adjourn.